Hello students, this is the video lecture that I'm doing for Chapter 8 about covering the courts. This is for JMS 494. I've come to downtown Los Angeles. I'm trying to get some scenery in the background there. Come to downtown Los Angeles. I thought it would be cute, thought it would be clever to do this particular video lecture in front of the LA County Courthouse, or maybe City Hall, because the LA City Hall is really cool, very iconic. But my God, now I realize why I never come to downtown LA. I hate driving here, and parking sucks. Okay, so I found parking. I'm gonna get some food, then maybe I'll just drive by the courthouse and get video from the car. But like, I'm not gonna look for parking again. I'm gonna pay 12 bucks just to park here for a little bit. We are going to begin, as we often do, with something from the U.S. Constitution. Here we've got the Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, blah, 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 blah. Okay, there's more to it than that. You can read that. Now, what the Sixth Amendment here is, gives you the right to a jury by your peers. Remember that phrase, speedy, okay, and public trial right there. There is inherently a tension between the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. If you are put on trial for something, say, alleged to have committed some horrible, heinous activity, how can you possibly have a fair trial if you've already been convicted in the court of public opinion? If the media has already presented you and shown evidence or circumstantial evidence, whatever, if you've already been sort of portrayed as the guilty party by the media, how could you possibly get a fair trial? And many people, myself included, do believe that press coverage does affect trials, although it is not supposed to. And here I got a little image I want to bring up right here. In particular, we get, now what this study shows, this is from 2024, what this study shows is that people see a lot more news stories about property crime, drug-related crimes, violent crimes. Then look at that final category there, white-collar crimes. Crimes that affect property, like maybe car theft, burglary, get a disproportionate amount of media coverage. And also people of color are portrayed disproportionately as being criminals in the media, whereas white collar crime, I remember this when I was an undergraduate, we learned this decades ago when I was studying sociology, white collar crime and financial fraud and government corruption is far more economically costly. It is far more impactful to the United States. That type of stuff doesn't get a massive amount of press coverage. So all the press coverage that we get, all the media coverage of crime does affect the way people think. Although in a perfect world, a judge and a jury should decide, everything removed from public opinion, but that doesn't happen. So the Sixth Amendment and the First Amendment present some type of inherent tension. Now I'm going to play a portion of a podcast. This podcast is done by someone who is an alumni of San Diego State. The person studied journalism and now feels so proud and wants to help out the school. And we are enormously grateful for all the work that you do, Josh. Does a podcast with people who graduated with journalism degrees, including people who graduated from the School of Journalism and Media Studies. Anyway, this is a little portion of a podcast with Edward Lewis is being interviewed. Edward Lewis, I'm reading here, graduated class of 2011, does sports journalism and covers sports and stuff like that for TMZ, which is kind of a tabloid television show, also a website. Anyway, but Edward Lewis talks about all the information that he gets from courts and how covering the courts and the information that comes from court cases and court officers is so instrumental to what he does. And if you are going to go into journalism or producing any type of like news content, yes, the court system does produce a tremendous amount of information, but it comes with certain sensitivities.
Right? Like you can get things from everybody as long as they're a law enforcement agency. Different states and different cities have different rules. Like Florida is far more open. If somebody gets arrested in Florida, I'll have the body cam footage, the mug shot, all that within hours. If somebody gets arrested in California, you may never get it. You know what I mean? So it is. It's a lot of work. I know you just have to do it. You have to know what cities, what states, what country or counties, what clerks will talk to you, what won't. By now, I've covered arrests in probably every major city in the United States, so I'm kind of familiar with all the PIOs and stuff like that. But if you know who to call and if you know where to look, it's easy enough, But it's a lot of work, and again, a lot of these records are only available after the case gets disposed. So what I mean by that is let's say XYZ gets arrested. He obviously has a criminal case. It goes into court, and I follow it through the court. I have a big calendar, and if you know the court system, you'll have your arraignment on April 12th, but your trial won't be for April 12th, 2024. You know what I mean? So you have to follow these trials and court cases through months and years sometimes. And then you're finally able to request the body cam and the dash cam. And that's why sometimes like TMZ will be like, we'll drop a video from 2 years ago. It's because we followed it all the way to its end. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of public records requests. It's a lot of like calling PIO. It's a lot of talking to people. But at the end of the day, if you work hard enough, you can get the information you need. You just have to make sure you follow all these court cases and stuff because there's a lot of them.
You just used the word calendar. I'm imagining some massive calendar inside the TMZ newsroom that just has color coded about like XYZ arraignment. Is it like that, or what?
You are not wrong. No, that's absolutely what it is. It's not a physical calendar, but it's a digital calendar. But yes, it has all color coordinated. Mine are generally green, the sports cases, but obviously TMZ has theirs. They're generally purple. And there are just every day. If you look on our calendar, it's. For example, Willie McGinnis on Monday, he has an arraignment. I know that, like, so I got it in my little calendar. I'll check in. I'll call the court, be like, hey, what happened to Willie McGinnis? They'll say it was pushed to April 15th or whatever. And you move it there, and it's huge. It's a massive calendar. I mean, it's huge. There's probably 15 cases a day that we all look at. I'm responsible for the sports ones, and I love that aspect of it, just because.
Okay, this bit of advice that I'm going to give to you right now was given to me by one of my colleagues, Professor Arthur Santana. Thank you, Arthur, for this information. Arthur has Professor Santana has serious journalist background. I used to produce websites for TV shows like everybody else, Raymond. Santana actually like covered stuff as a journalist. So anyway, he said, tell your students don't talk to jurors during a trial. Maybe you're an aspiring journalist, you're a new journalist, maybe you're even covering a trial for some type of assignment in JMS. Just because the jurors are not sequestered means when they're locked and sort of put away. Just because they're not sequestered, you might see them going to lunch, you might see them out and about, you might see them walking out of the courtroom. Don't walk up and talk to them, okay? Because that could trigger a mistrial. I don't know if he's seen this, but he was very clear. I asked him a few years ago. Santana said, Arsenault, please tell your students, do not talk to jurors during the trial. You should be familiar with the press enterprise test. What page of the textbook is that on? I should know this stuff. Let me look. It's mentioned on page 369 and 8th edition of the textbook. It's probably mentioned elsewhere. But anyway, there's kind of a ruling and a test that the courts apply when they want to determine how open to make a particular court case and how much information to reveal to the public. This is known as the press enterprise test. You should know that. Hint, hint. I'm going to talk here, go back into history. There was this big court case in the 1930s. Charles Lindbergh, first person to fly solo across the Atlantic, and one of his old-fashioned plane, he flew across the Atlantic. He was a massive celebrity. I mean, I wasn't alive then, but people say he was like, it's like the man on the moon kind of thing. He was like the biggest celebrity in the United States. His child was kidnapped. This was very sad, tragic thing. I don't mean to make light of it. A guy named Bruno Hauptmann was put on trial for kidnapping and maybe even killing. I'm not sure if they found the baby or not. Anyway, Lindbergh baby kidnapping case. Bruno Hauptmann's on trial. This is an ad from a newspaper, Chicago newspaper, in 1935. And look in the corner there, sort of the top left. They're advertising movies and stage shows, Shirley Temple, and they're actually saying you can actually watch these courtroom scenes in the theater, because in the 1930s you had radio, you didn't have television, but you had film. So now we have institutions of mass media, whereas previously, there may have been a famous murder trial in the 1890s, the 1870s. It couldn't be covered in this way. So Bruno Hauptmann is the first big celebrity trial, first big court case that happens in the age of mass media. And everyone talked about this was like the crime of the century. This trial was like the biggest thing you can imagine. Oh, okay. Sorry. I guess the baby was found dead. Hauptmann is found guilty of murder. Okay. Spoiler. In 1966, and I'm pretty sure this is talked about in the textbook, Shepard is put on trial. He's a doctor. He says someone breaks into his house, kills his wife. He's put on trial for murder. Everyone thinks he did it. The circumstantial evidence is pretty big. It looks like maybe he did it. This case, by the way, inspired the TV show and then the film The Fugitive. If you've ever seen The Fugitive, that's a pretty good film with Harrison Ford. Yeah, and Tommy Lee Jones is in that. But I digress. Anyway, Fugitive is a good movie based on this case. So Shepard is put on trial for killing his wife. The murder conviction was actually overturned because of the massive amount of pretrial publicity. Judges later ruled that there was no way that this guy could have gotten a fair trial with all the publicity. That's why Shepard v. Maxwell is important to this particular topic. After this, because of similar incidents, the courts have come up with a whole range of ways that they can kind of mitigate the influence of press coverage on a trial. They can sequester the jury, where you put the jury, lock them up, put them in a hotel so they are not going to be exposed to radio, TV, or social media. You could actually change the venue, move it to a different location. You could delay it. Now, if you delay it, that could violate the Sixth Amendment, which says speedy trial. But a judge could say, you know what, we're going to wait 6 months. We're going to wait a year. We're going to wait for the heat to die down. So there's all these kind of different ways that the courts had come up with to try and mitigate the influence of media coverage. Now we get the O.J. Simpson trial. When O.J. Simpson was put on trial for murder, he was accused of murdering his ex-wife and this guy, I can't remember, Goldman, I think was his name, just some young guy from a restaurant who happened to be returning eyeglasses, wrong place, wrong time. I'm going to go out on a limb. You could accuse me of being biased. You can accuse me of being biased. I think OJ did it. I think the evidence that OJ did it seemed to be overwhelming. There's just an overwhelming amount of evidence that OJ Simpson did the murder, but he was actually he actually got off. He got off on the criminal trial. He was convicted in a civil trial that came later. Up until that point, he was the most famous person that had ever been put on trial for murder. He was a famous college football player. Then he was a famous NFL player in the 1970s. Then he becomes like a Hollywood actor. He did this commercial for Hertz Rent-A-Car where he's running through an airport. When I was a kid, this was always on TV. And then when he, was sort of wanted for murder, there was a slow speed police chase on the highway, and everyone was making jokes about, OJ Simpson running from the police. Anyway, I don't mean to make light of it because two people did actually murder. It was a pretty grotesque, brutal murder. But many people believe that the massive amount of press coverage did influence negatively the trial, that it was on TV for weeks, if not months. And it seemed as if the decisions of the judges and the lawyer and people were playing for the camera. They weren't playing for actually getting the truth, or they weren't talking to the jury. They were like playing for the people out at home and staging things as a public spectacle. I was alive then. I was watching TV then. There's nothing else that ever come like it. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, no, was nothing like the Blake Lively Baldoni thing was nothing like this. Here's some information in the textbook. Whether or not cameras are allowed in the courtroom varies widely depending on what level of court you are at. At the Supreme Court, there's no cameras whatsoever at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, I think maybe you can get audio recording, but there's no cameras at all. And so it varies as to where you are. Okay. And now we have this situation. I don't even know what to say about this. Because of AI, I'm recording this in June 2025, and the tools with AI, Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs. Is that his real name, Sean Combs? And then he was Puffy, and then he was Puff Daddy, now he's Diddy. Okay, that guy is on trial for these sex freak-off parties and the baby oil. I mean, it's really sordid, twisted stuff. There's no cameras in the courtroom, but they're using AI to take the court transcripts and reenact it. So I'm throwing my hands up in just utter confusion. Like, okay, you can ban cameras in the courtroom. With AI, they can just make the stuff anyway. So I don't know what the future is, and I don't know what the situation will be like at the moment you are taking JMS 494 and watching this video lecture. but just know it's a huge gray area, blurring a lot of lines. And if you ever do watch TV news about a court and they're showing like these weird sort of hand-drawn sketches, and you wonder why is that? Why is a police why is a courtroom sketch artist a job? Why is there a job of a courtroom sketch artist? It's because cameras aren't allowed, but you can allow drawings, and apparently now you can allow AI reenactments. Crazy world. Okay, as it turns out, I'm close enough to the courthouse that I can actually walk over there. So that's what I'm doing. Just had some food at the Grand Central Market. I had some pork chop suey served to me by this, I wouldn't say she was a nice Latina waitress. She seemed busy. I'm sure she's a nice woman. She was just very busy. Isn't that quintessential Latina, serving me some Chinese food there? That's not even Chinese food. That's like Asian American fusion food. Guy sitting next to me had a LA Dodgers logo tattooed on his neck, which is perfect. Now going to the courthouse. There is sort of this ongoing debate, and there was an ongoing debate, and there's a lot of questions about social media in the court. I asked AI to generate this image for me. I said, show me an image of people in a courtroom posting cat memes on their phones, not listening to the judge. This is the image that AI gave me. Note, there's no people of color. I mean, there's no obvious people of color. I didn't tell AI, just give me a bunch of white people in a courtroom. That's what AI gave me. I'm just saying that's kind of weird. Some courts have allowed social media use like cameras. It varies state by state, varies at the court level. Other courts feel like it is some type of intrusion and that it's opening up jurors to outside influence that shouldn't be there. So just know that there's no absolute hard, fast rule about using social media in the courtroom. If you are in a courtroom covering it for some reason, I would not be posting memes and images about it. I'm just saying I would err on the side of don't post stuff. Brandsburg v. Hayes. Okay. The Supreme Court ruled that freedom of press does not create a constitutional privilege protecting reporters from having to testify in grand jury proceedings about the identity of news sources or information received in confidence. Okay. The operative information is on page 402 from the textbook. Please take a look at 402. Talks about reporters' privilege. So if a reporter has some information that the courts feel necessary, they can compel that person to testify in a grand jury proceeding. Journalists cannot claim absolute privilege and say, I'm keeping my sources secret. Now, we refer to these things as shield laws. It's a rather haphazard system for protecting journalists. There's no federal shield law. There is no federal shield law for journalists involved in federal proceedings, and the state laws vary widely. Here's that slide I skipped over. Yeah, here it is, photo from the textbook. Don't worry about what state has what law. I just present it to know that it varies. And if you are going to work in a particular state, inshallah, we're all going to have great high-paying jobs in the future. I feel truthful about that. I remain optimistic. Inshallah, everyone watching this video lecture is going to have a good job in the future. So depending on what state you're working in, just figure out what the laws are. But that is the concept of a shield law, what a shield law is, why they exist, and why they don't necessarily give absolute privilege because of this Brandsburg v. Hayes ruling. There's ambiguity about shield laws. Defining a journalist is incredibly difficult. I think we've talked about this in previous video lectures before because we do not license and credential journalists in the United States. And a hacker could be considered a protected source. I think I took this from the textbook. I don't know where that is, but anyway, take a look at the shield law stuff in the textbook. I'm probably going to ask you a question or two on the exam about it. I made it. All that effort. The $12 enough to pay in parking, maybe even 15, hopefully 12. I made it to the courthouse in downtown Los Angeles, and these pieces of paper behind me, I think that's to cover up some graffiti that showed up recently about ICE. And yeah, and then over here, you can see City Hall. Yeah, there you go. There's City Hall. See, I got it all done in one shot, one nice panoramic shot there. There's City Hall, very iconic building. Now back to the video lecture. When it comes to juveniles, as we have, or as we will when we talk about obscenity, kids are considered to be kind of a protected class, that they have special rules that apply to them, even though the Constitution doesn't say that. Yeah, generally there's sort of less coverage, less information revealed when it has to do with people that are underage. Okay, that we tend to think about kids as deserving more protection and warranting more protection. So you should be more careful if you are covering a court case involving a juvenile. Now, when it comes to sexual assaults and things like that, almost always we, meaning just saying collective, we try to shield the victim's identity. Okay. That's generally what we try to do. People accused of sex crimes don't necessarily have that same type of protection. Maybe that is a point of debate, but you should take a look at the section of the textbook that discusses this. And then we have, as you could probably imagine, if something is open, maybe that's presumptively open, but then you have all sorts of stuff that deal with issues of national security that involves a whole other range of concerns as well. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, that is it for the video lecture on Chapter 8 about covering the courts, and hopefully you got some good information. I know it varies and it's kind of ambiguous, and the law is always changing, and it changes by what state you're in, but I was just trying to give you kind of the gist of things and prevent you from getting into trouble in the future.